Thanks for coming. As you can tell by the documentary, Broken Saints is a bit of a passion of mine. My history was in the video game industry. Hi, I'm Brooke Burgess. The formal part of the introduction is now done. I moved out to Vancouver to the West Coast from Ontario, back in 1993. And like everyone else who moves to the West Coast from the central part of Canada, we all want to be writers and actors and directors. That's what we hope to do. So I moved out there, and it's slim pickings. You're all working for American productions anyway. You'll get bit parts. You'll get to write maybe one episode of The Outer Limits or X-Files or something. It's the best you can do. But I lucked out because I met a man who was there during the revolution in the video games industry. In the late 70s and early 80s on the West Coast, when guys were making games by themselves and they were picked up by publishers. Sam Nelson, who made games for Atari, for Intellivision, for ColecoVision, for all those old school 1980s video game systems that some of us might remember. And he said, hey, he came into my video game store where I worked, and we started talking about storytelling and about passion, and about the idea of communicating to people, to getting that emotional resonance through interactive media. And I thought, you know, games have this potential, really could do it. And he's like, so you're gonna ask me for a freaking job or what? And I went, okay, who are you? And he's like, well, I currently produce, I'm an executive producer at Electronic Arts Canada. You know, the Madden football games, Need for Speed, FIFA Soccer, SSX, all that stuff. So I went for 3 years and worked on some games at EA. And it was fun, sure. It was hard work, and yeah, I made a fair chunk of change. But after 3 years in what I like to peg as the cubicle barnyard, I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it. I woke up every morning feeling obligated. I didn't know to what, but I just couldn't go to work anymore. It was 1999. Let's flash back for a second. It was 1999, the year when mainstream film gave a little punch in the nose to the general audience and said, hey, here's a little Matrix. Here's a little Fight Club. Here's a little American Beauty. And Being John Malkovich. Here were films that were challenging our notions of social structure on a macro and a micro level. And I was geared for this. This made me happy and passionate. And one day I was out on the deck at EA and I was smoking a cigarette, and I had this vision of myself standing on a mountaintop in a little white t-shirt looking over the ranges of New Zealand, because I was passionate about Lord of the Rings filming at the time. And I walked back inside and went into my boss's office and said, I can't do this anymore. And he goes, so you need a vacation? You need some time off? No, I need to go. I need to quit. So wait, we can give you a promotion. We can give you some more money. No, we can raise your stock options. No, we'll do anything you want. I'm like, let me go. And he did. I got the golden handshake. I cashed out my stocks. And I went for 6 months overseas to the South Pacific. I had some friends who lived in New Zealand, and like I said, I was passionate about Lord of the Rings at the time, one of my favorite books, a trilogy of books, and I wanted to watch the filming. So I picked up all my stuff. I had never done the backpacking thing before, and I went to New Zealand, and I went to Australia, but the bulk of my trip was spent in Fiji. And not on the main island, not near Suva, where you hear all the news about the revolution and the indigenous peoples getting all angry about land ownership. No. There are over 300 islands in the Fijian chain. And when you can get out to the really small ones, you can still live a tribal lifestyle. And so for 2 months of my trip, I lived a tribal lifestyle. And it changed my life. And then my money ran out, and I had to come back. And I came back to Vancouver on the West Coast in complete culture shock, totally out of money, and I had to swallow my pride and accept a contract position writing for games yet again. But that was okay, because now I had a sense of purpose. I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna write a book about a disaffected Gen Xer who wants to see what's spiritually wrong, politically wrong, what's socially wrong. Shit, Douglas Copeland's done that a couple of times. That's not original. That's not original at all. But I was lucky enough to run back into a young friend who used to come into my game store, Andrew West, the artist that you saw in the documentary. He used to be a young kid who came in, and we'd sit and talk about philosophy and life and everything else. He loved Japanese culture. He had been there for a few years in an exchange program. And he's like, hey, remember when we used to talk about maybe doing a comic together? I could draw, you could write it, we could self-publish. I'm like, hey, that's a pretty good idea. sure, sounds like fun. I can do that in my spare time, maybe get some of this artistic angst out. And then he said, well, I have this friend you might want to meet. His name's Ian Kirby. He actually lives a few houses down from you, where you're currently living. I'm like, and I've never met this kid? And he goes, no, he's my age, 19. And so I went to Ian's house. Now Ian, as Catherine said, Catherine from Switch Interactive, who helped us start Broken Saints, more on that in a little bit, Ian was self-taught in Adobe Premiere at 14 years old, self-taught in Maya at 15 years old. This kid knew his stuff. And at the time, just for fun, in his spare time after being hired as a creative director for a design firm at 18 years of age, in his spare time he was playing around with Flash. And he said, I met this kid, and he's like, oh, it's a really neat idea. I heard about your comic idea with Andrew. Well, maybe you'll want to look at this technology. And I hadn't seen much Flash since I left EA, just little bits. And he showed me the current state of Flash. A pretty impressive little program that anyone can pick up and use. Unfortunately, it was being used to, create animated coiling dog turds on the floor and people being beheaded and violence and stupidity and everything of the South Park ilk, which was okay if it had a message, but this stuff didn't. These were 2-minute cartoons about blood and pooping and sex and whatever else, right? Lowest common denominator, mildly entertaining, office cooler stuff. But I saw something. Here you had a medium that currently, or at that time, was trying to ape or mimic the traditional animation medium. Online entertainment was trying to be like TV or movies. You'd have a little window, but you try to tell this little animated story like Disney or like a Japanese anime. You had a little window, but you try to say, oh, we can have full-length movies in this little window of 2 hours with people talking and you're sitting there watching at your computer desk. It doesn't make sense. They wonder why part of the dot-com entertainment crash happened because people don't want that form of entertainment. It's a different medium. You need to use it differently. What do people do online? They read news stories. They access information. Those things text. They look at pictures. They download images. Sure, most of it's porn, but they download images. And they listen to music. Right? Audio, text, pictures. Guess what Flash does really, really well? Audio, text, and pictures. And here I was, coming from a background where I was passionate about graphic literature, passionate about comic books. I had been weaned on stuff like the 1980s revolutionary works of Frank Miller, The Dark Knight Returns, Alan Moore's The Watchmen, and then later, thank goodness, Neil Gaiman's Sandman anthology. Powerful storytelling, award-winning storytelling that stirred my imagination and gave me passion and also gave me a bit of spiritual direction in its own way. The medium, at the time, before the release of movies like Spider-Man, was starting to die again. Comic shops were no longer cool. They were not the place to hang out. They were only the dominion of hardcore nerds. Sales were going down. Toys actually were making up for the loss in actual comic book sales in these specialty shops. And I kind of wanted to pay homage to a medium that I was passionate about. I wanted to do something with graphic literature. And here was a tool, here was Flash, that enabled you to go a step further, to do something in the medium that hadn't been done before. Stan Lee, one of the great fathers of comics, tried it with his company, a few years back, and hired 300 people, and there was a huge stock collapse, and it was horrific. It just did not work. What you needed to do was create not only a compelling story, but a compelling environment where people wanted to partake of said environment, a world that they would believe in, something that wasn't compromised. So that's where we get to the whole money issue. I know someone's going to ask me the question, because everywhere I go, someone asks me the question, how do you make money off of this? Huh? How do you make money? You don't got any banners on your site? You don't got any advertisers? You're paying your own bandwidth, right? So how do you make any money? I don't. And I have to honestly tell you, when I'm on my deathbed, when I'm staring infinity in the face, I'm not going to give a flying fuck about what car I drove, about what type of house I lived in, or how many chicks I banged. Okay? I'm going to care about some of the good I did before I died. And so that sense of obligation I had when I woke up in the morning suddenly became this very freeing thing. Yeah, I can take this stock money that I made from making drugs for kids, basically, which is what most games are. Some aren't. I see the potential for the medium, but most are. Okay, keep them distracted. Here's a kill simulator. Kill, 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 kill. You wonder why 10-year-olds can walk into a school and head track. Why cops go, oh my God,